I would like to say good afternoon and thank you for joining us for Future Forward's edition of QB Talks, Integration Acceleration for QBO. Thanks to our presenters, Kelly Gonzalez and Kristen Nees-Serraldo, for sharing their insights on QBO and QBO integrations. Kelly is the founder of Totally Booked, Totally SEO, Ideation Think Forward, Leading Lady Machine Works, and the co-host of QB Talks. And Kristen is the founder of the Friday Guide, Leading Lady Machine Works, professional trier. Now, I don't know, Kristen, is that a company or is that just I try hard?
I'm just a professional trier.
I like it. I like it. And the co-host of QB Talks, which is why she's here with us.
Yeah.
My name is Gary Dehart. I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant, your host here for Future Forward, and I will be just doing a quick intro and then I'm getting off the screen. But I would like to say thank you to our sponsor, Rewind. Rewind Backups protects the critical data which runs your and your clients' businesses. Online accounting software products don't automatically save your transactions and files if they're deleted. Rewind Backups is the undo button for your online accounting software, automatically saving and restoring the latest version of your books. As of March 2022, Rewind Backups are available for QuickBooks Online, Shopify, Shopify Plus, GitHub, Trello, Microsoft 365, and BigCommerce, with a dozen other platforms currently in beta. We do have a couple of housekeeping items. CPE is available. Usually for QB Talks, it's not. This time it is, since it's part of the Future Forward Summit. It is available, but you must, just like on any other CPE worthy webinar, you must be present for at least 50 minutes. You must complete the poll questions, and we will send you your certificate within 48, I'm going to say 72 hours, just to give myself a little bit of wiggle room, but we'll get that out to you. And then if you have any questions, we're going to ask you to put them in the chat or down into the questions panel. A link to the recording will be sent to you, but it can also be found on our YouTube channel, and I will also put that in the chat. And the slides are available, and I will put those in the chat too once I go off screen and go into the background here and turn this over to Kelly and Liz. So without further delay, I do want to say thank you again to Kelly and to, I said Liz, but Kristen, pardon me, and say thanks to Kelly and Kristen for sharing the wisdom here. And thank you all for joining us for today's session of QB Talks. It's yours. How about it?
Okay, so I'm not on mute, right? Hi guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we are super excited to talk all things apps and integrating and accelerating that integration. As Gary mentioned, I am Kelly Gonzalez. I run a bookkeeping firm out of New York City called Totally Booked. I also get to work with Kristen as my business partner for Leading Lady Machine Works, where we do some different merch for accountants, such as mugs, t-shirts, work from home, fun stuff. And we work on stuff like this together as well. So I'm going to now move over to Kristen so she can introduce herself a little bit, and then we'll get into the content.
My name's Kristen Nees-Serraldo. I am a QuickBooks Pro Advisor. I also work in Xero, so I'm an agnostic person. And I work with Kelly on Leading Lady Machine Works. We do swag, etc. I put down professional trier because I love just trying new things. But my first love is serving the restaurant and bar community, particularly the independents that got hit so hard during the last couple of years. I've been in that business in some capacity since 1993. So a long time. And yeah, that's it.
Nice. All right, so we always like to honor Murph. So that's where QB Talks started. And so we go back on a little bit about some of his nuggets of knowledge that he's given us over time. So Kristen, do you want to cover this one, or do you want me to just quote Murph?
Yeah, I will. Basically, this is the same one that we used last time, but I thought it was it applies so much to what we're doing today, talking about integrations and accelerating integrations. And the takeaway is never test drive a new app or third-party software with your live file ever. What are the exceptions to that? Nothing, ever. So his larger quote is here, but basically there are so many things out there that can help you get around using a live file. I have to be honest, I have a couple of clients that I will test files with, but they are sandbox clients with their permission. So it's specifically, I know the file so well because I've been working with them for so long and have so many safeguards in there that I do test in my second round of testing with those clients. But even then, having specific files you test on is really important. That way you can back out if you need to. And Kelly, I know you have something to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep a sandbox file myself so that I can connect different apps or sometimes import data just to kind of see what it's going to look like. I will say that that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. I thought in the very beginning, I was just going to connect some apps. It was going to be great. All the stuff was going to flow in seamlessly and I had nothing to worry about. That was definitely not the case. So I have definitely gone the route of importing a bunch of stuff, having transactions come in, let's say it's a bunch of sales receipts, and then having to take them out one by one, or going into the GL and having to click, delete, confirm, click, delete, confirm. So like I already know the motion, click on it, yes, delete, are you sure? Yes. And so having to go through that, I learned my lesson. So yeah, creating a sandbox account made a huge difference, but then also having something like Rewind to be able to set a point in time, so to speak, where you want it to back up before you do whatever it is that you're going to do, or before your client does whatever it is that they're going to do. It's a great tool. And I don't want to touch on it too much because we actually have some more information on it later. So we can move on and I will continue to discuss Rewind.
Well, I just want to say one thing. Yes, Rewind is our sponsor, but honestly, we would be talking about them anyway, especially in the context of this particular episode, because it is such an integral part of integration and making that process go faster, is having those built-in safeguards so that you can try new things, so that you can take chances on like how you should integrate or maybe what might work and what might not. It just gives you a lot more freedom. So yes, we love having them as a sponsor, but also we'd be talking about them anyway. They're great.
Yeah.
I think we need a poll question actually at this point.
Gary.
So if Gary can put that up, that would be great. There we go. How do you feel about implementing new tech? Love it, it's okay, or no thanks?
And you can totally answer honestly, nobody's judging. Totally a scary situation when you could potentially screw up a company file. So I get that.
And we will give this just another few more seconds. We do only have 3 CPE questions on this session, so you're gonna have to answer them all. So if you're out of the room, please come back, hurry, 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 or close enough windows so that you find the one we're on and answer the poll as soon as you possibly can. And we'll close that in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And Gary, what did we get for that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of down the middle.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised.
Nice.
I mean, I think it definitely depends on how many staff members you have. I know that complicates things.
Yeah.
And also whether or not the tech you're implementing is for your own firm or for clients definitely ups the aggravation factor, I'm sure.
And the priority factor. Like sometimes it's I have to do this thing for my client. I have to get it done. I have to research it, test it out, etc. Or I could kind of wait on this. It's for me. I'll just keep doing it manually until I have time. And usually that's never. So that's part of the issue.
Never. So Kelly,
All right.
let's do some cool apps on the block. And this is a specific integration acceleration edition. So these aren't necessarily the newest apps, but we feel like there's some serious core apps you need if you're thinking about integrating new apps. If they're like the meta apps, and I don't mean meta like Facebook, I mean meta like they're apps that help you with apps. Having them in your toolkit can be a huge help to integrating apps well.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you go to the next slide, you get to see my cool cartoon character. That is me. It matches my hair. Kristen created that for me. And so if you are a regular at QB Talks App Neighborhood Watch, you will have seen this before. This is part of our formatting. So we go through just some either cool new apps or some apps that have done some updates maybe, have made some changes more recently, so we can share the information with you.
cool.
All right.
So number one on the list.
All right. So Uncat. Uncat, I assume short for uncategorized, is an app that connects to QuickBooks Zero or QuickBooks Desktop in this case, and it will tie to a certain account. So if you tell it to tie to, like I usually call it an ask account. So ask client, ask Kristen, ask Kelly, whatever I name it. It's the expenses or the income, whatever I put into that category that I'm unsure of. So sometimes the memo is confusing, or maybe a payment came in the same amount for, two different clients and I'm not sure which is which. Whatever the case might be, if there's something that I'm unclear on, I don't want to necessarily add it to the book, so to speak. And so I'm going to add it to that category and then have it go to my client. The cool thing about Uncat is it eliminates that spreadsheet situation. So what I used to do was put everything into that ask account, and then at the end of the month, create this long spreadsheet, and then they would have to sit there and go through and tell me what everything was, usually in some kind of descriptive note situation. In this case, they have the option to choose from a dropdown of different accounts that it could have been. So, office supplies, software, etc. Whatever that is, they'll have those options. As the accountant, I can also limit which accounts they're able to choose from. So it won't be the full GL. I'll be able to say to them, you can only choose from, let's say, these expense accounts or cost of goods, whatever I want to limit it down to. Some other cool stuff is you can brand it as the accountant. So you can put your logo on it, your colors, so that it looks like it's, from you, essentially, white label it. You can set it up so that they get an email alert for every time you ask them something, or you can have it go in once a week, so you can schedule it. You can also add a text alert if if they want to, if you prefer it, whatever the case is. You can also give them a text option so that they can get back to you sooner, at least. So when you're doing maybe a cleanup, you might be a little bit more urgent to get those answers. It doesn't do just expenses. So I use it primarily for expenses, but you can also ask for if they're missing a department or a location. If you need to add a class to something, you can ask them for the class. And then you also have the option of tax rate. So if it's something where you have, let's say, the bulk of the information, but you just need a little bit more, you can ask them for that as well in there. And I just discovered this morning when I was on their website that they also have a certification, which is kind of cool. So it's watch their demos, answer some questions, use the product. So when you're actively using it, but then you can actually also go in and get certified. So I like to do the certification courses, usually for any of the apps that I'm working with. It gives me a little bit more confidence when I'm speaking about them, when I'm using them. It kind of lets me know where to go if I have an issue or a question. So I've been using it since scaling New Heights last year, actually, when we walked across their booth, because they had some really cool branding stuff.
Oh, okay.
They're all about
that for just 1 second.
Yeah. They're all about herding cats. Yes. Yeah. How awesome is this? Also totally on brand with my coloring.
Yeah, there's a cat on a horse.
Yep.
Also, I like that they know the true value prop. Like, I love getting spreadsheets from my accountant, said no client ever. That is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Also,
So-
I just want to point out too,
Yeah.
in addition to uncategorized expenses, uncategorized income, uncategorized assets
Yeah.
also.
Mm-hmm.
Run through here.
Yeah, so there's definitely some, I mean, I think it's a really powerful tool, and we don't usually go over pricing on QB Talks because if you watch this in the future, it may change, but I can attest to it being very affordable. So I don't anticipate that changing. It is very feature rich for what they charge for it. And so solves, I'm going to say your client doesn't have to log in. They can just get a magic link that you send them, brings them right to their page. They can fill it out. They don't have to remember a password. And then what's cool on the accountant side is when they make the changes, you can approve them, say yes, yay or nay to what they've called it, because let's be honest, sometimes our clients don't know what GL account to choose. You can then make that change and then push it through to QuickBooks. So you don't even, or Xero in this case, or desktop, but in my case, QuickBooks Online. So you can push it right through and then that's it, you're done. So you clear out that uncategorized expense, income, asset, et cetera, category, and then you can go move on and, be done with your month end.
And I wanted to ask you something, because you brought up a good point. Like sometimes, even if you limit the number of GL accounts that a client could choose, sometimes they still don't know what to choose. Is there a way that you can see, like, could they respond with a description, not picking an account so that you could then pick the account?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a spot for notes. So they can put in notes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, I may say something along the lines of, not sure what to call this, but this was the situation, or not sure where to put this, but I took a client to lunch. This was the client, who knows, whatever it is that they need to let you know. Yeah, they can absolutely respond without choosing a GL.
That's so awesome.
GL category.
It's going to eliminate a lot of the
Yeah, so a lot of times I think clients or accountants, right, we struggle with communicating to our clients the stuff that we need from them sometimes, or we send it in places that's difficult for them. If it's really just at the end of the month, you're looking to get answers on what some of these transactions are, it's a really simple tool and on both sides. I've had clients that are tech savvy use it and clients that are not so tech savvy also use it, and I've had zero complaints. And I will say they have really great reviews on apps.com. And so check it out. You can see what other accountants have said, what other users have said. Jocelyn just asked in the chat, in what format does the client get? I'm guessing you're asking, what did they see on the other side? So they would get a link to log in, and they'll get kind of like a dashboard that says, here are the transactions that your accountant is looking for some information on. It'll give them a notes option, and then it'll also, if you choose to, give them that drop down for the GL so that they can choose from there. But again, nothing goes through until you say it's okay. So you can definitely set it up so that they don't have the ability to screw up anything in QuickBooks. Look at me knocking over my microphone, sorry. No problem, Jocelyn. So let's go to our next.
I love that. You kind of sold me on that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to check it out. I mean, even though I'm such a control freak and I usually know everything that's going on because I work so closely with my clients. Still, the idea of them just being able to change stuff and not go into the GL, that's like,
I prefer that. I prefer that nobody's in QuickBooks but me, and maybe their CPA or tax filer, whoever that might be. Totally fair. But if I can avoid anyone actually making changes to transactions, I'm all for it, and Uncat has absolutely helped me do that. Okay,
awesome.
So I'm a big fan of Zapier. I use it a couple of different ways, but there are like thousands upon thousands of ways to use Zapier. And part of this, I will say, I have to give credit to Heather Satterley, who I learned a lot of this from. And so I'm putting a link in the chat to her class that she teaches on Zapier, because I can highlight some of the things, but she could probably tell you all of the things, or at least like close to all of the things.
Next level.
Yeah.
Heather Zapier.
Heather Zapier. Heather is definitely a Zapier power user. She teaches classes on it, and it's great. One of the most valuable Zaps that I've learned from her is my auto reply to my leads that come through from QuickBooks Find a Pro Advisor. So I set up my Find a Pro Advisor profile, and leads are generated based on primarily location, because that's how they come in. But now I have an auto reply in there's a Zap that says, when you see this email come in, reply with this email, canned email stating, hey, so happy that you've reached out. Obviously I keep it fairly general. Hey, I'm so happy that you reached out. Please use this link to my calendar to schedule an appointment so that we can talk about how we might be able to help. Very simple, but I will say it's converted so many leads.
And that's got to be like next level for someone who, I know you have help, but essentially like solopreneurs, like solo firms, that's just one of those admin things. It's like just having that on the ball follow-up can so make the difference. And I've just always admired you for having a thing where they can just book an appointment like right away.
That's me. I have it on my website. I have it on my auto reply. But also because how many times nobody wants to go back and forth with, oh, are you free on Tuesday at 2? What time zone are you in? How much time do we need? Here's a link to my calendar. Here's a little survey that I need you to fill out. And so most of the time I know if they're going to be a qualified lead before we even have a conversation. And I also use that to be able to say, hey, we don't look like we're going to be a good fit, but I do know this other pro advisor who handles nonprofits, or I do know this other pro advisor that works on construction, companies. And so I'm able to send them to the right place. So they're also not bouncing around, but I know all of that from the very beginning, right? So, and as somebody comes in with the lead, it sends them automatically a response. I would say 9 times out of 10, they just click through, they put themselves on my calendar, and then we have a discussion. So it's helped with increasing my sales by way of getting more calls on my calendar. But it does other things. So I don't want to get stuck up on how I'm using it.
Well, yeah, it does. This is their website. It does all, just in case someone out there has never seen it, and it looks like they've updated it since last time I came, but not only do they have like all the apps that you can connect, and it's basically like a no code writing, if this happens, then this happens, right? So you're just combining logical sort of like if this, then that, which let's face it, most of us who are bookkeepers and accountants, that's like our way of thinking. It's like, yes, that makes sense. But they also have resources in terms of you can hire an expert, someone like, obviously Heather is like next level, but you can hire experts to help you with more complicated things that you want to automate or accomplish. There's also a community and a university so that you can get oriented.
Yeah.
It's just fun to play around
I
with.
think the best thing about it is that it helps you connect all of your pieces, right? So like I always say that I need everything to talk to QuickBooks. In this case, Zapier is adjacent to that. But so I've set it up, right? So for example, it connects to Veeam, right? I use Veeam for payments, and I've set it up so that anytime a Veeam payment is initiated, I get an alert in Slack. So I know immediately, right? It's not, oh, when I get to my email, something happens, whatever the case. So if I generate a payment, if a client generates a payment, it alerts me right away. It helps connect the apps that don't necessarily work together, right? So Slack is a great example. I use Slack for communicating with almost everybody.
And you don't necessarily need apps to be like really intensely integrated. This is essentially accelerating an integration in a very particular place and only that place. So look, I don't want to hear from Veeam every single time anything happens ever. Maybe I only want to hear in Slack when a very particular thing happens. And so even though, Veeam might be integrated with my QuickBooks, I might just want that one extra little heads up on a little tiny thing. I might not even want that app to be completely inside my QuickBooks. I may just want one little thing.
Well, I think it goes back
to like customize. It
goes back to the control factor, right? We were saying how typically as accountants and bookkeepers, we want to make sure that we have some control over the process. And so I have some kind of weird peace of mind when it pops up and says, a payment has been initiated.
Yeah.
And so if at first I'm like, was it me? What client was it? I kind of have that like, oh yeah, duh. Okay, we're good. So it's a little bit of, I just kind of want to know what's going on all the time. But that's, yeah, so you can set alerts. Another way that I've used it is for the 2-factor authentication. So I know for people that are working with teams, it's really difficult sometimes. She's like, what? It's really difficult to get those alerts sometimes.
A little bit.
And so when a two-factor authentication is issued, right? So a code is issued, you log into, let's say, Bank of America, they email you a code. I have Zapier set up so that it goes through my emails and says, if I see an email from, let's say, Bank of America, Carol just said I'm blowing her mind. Thanks, Carol.
Yeah.
So if I have a two-factor,
why didn't you give me a heads up on this, girl? Like, oh, I could be using this.
basically it reads my email, right? And it says, okay, we're going to look for these things. If it comes from Bank of America, I want you, and I just have it copy the whole body of the email, but I'm sure there's a way to get it down to just the code. But I want you to take that whole, the whole body of that email and copy it into this Slack channel so that either myself or my team can see it. And so it has eliminated the back and forth, who got the code, am I using a cell phone? Should I send it to an email? No, we're just going to send it to this email address. It's going to read those emails and it's going to push it right through to Slack for us.
And that is so, because seriously, I know there's still a lot of apps, some that I use as well. And I even mostly work by myself and I still don't want to turn on that two-factor authentication on. There's some where you can, it's still an option, right? You don't have to do it, but you can.
I don't know how long we're going to be able to.
Well, I know it's changing, but right now it's still optional. And what a great way to make turning it on less of a hassle so that you can take advantage of those security protocols without like getting intensely slowed down, particularly if you're working with a team. That's amazing.
That's just
you're
it.
a genius.
Like it's thanks. It's supposed to be for our own good, right? It's for our own protection, for our clients' protection. I totally understand why it's important. Doesn't make it any more fun to deal with. And so it really started to present an issue as more and more apps and banks and so on started, because it's not just banks, right? It's for me to send anything in Veeam, I have to put in a code every time I log in. And so, yeah, it started to become kind of a pain in the butt. I'm like, all right, how can I solve for this? The other thing is once it's in Slack, it's on my computer, I can copy and paste rather than from my phone and type it out.
And like not having to, because I try and limit, when I'm checking email, I try and be more intentional about those times of day. And so sometimes going into my email to find that two-factor authentication, then I get distracted on the other emails I see and blah, blah, blah. It's just, and to be honest, I'm not super excited about like everyone switching to phone texting now. I don't know why. I just feel like I don't want to be getting things on my phone. I don't want to be getting financial things on my phone. I want a business, not a like side hustle. You know what I mean?
Well, also, I just want to keep it separated, having to put in my cell phone number and same. Like I use Listio with my clients so that I don't have to do things like text and email. And so anything that I can get out of my inbox and off of my cell phone, I'm all for it. So this is just, and also it's an inexpensive way to do it. So depending on how you have it set up, I have actually a business number that I set up through Dialpad. I know someone just said in the chat that they use Yodel. So I have a business number that I set up through Dialpad. So if it's a text, it comes through there and then I zap it over into Slack. And if it's an email, like Bank of America, for some reason defaults to email, I send the whole thing in through Slack. So we're all on the same page. Everybody can see it, no matter who generated it. Also, I kind of know what's going on sometimes. I'm like, oh, okay, someone's going in to reconcile. Someone has a question.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Be on alert that they're going to be, ask me a question in 3 minutes. Here's the other thing, just in general about Zapier. It's free to use to some extent if you're using only one sort of step in your Zap. So try it out. In addition, what else was I going to say? I forgot.
I was going to say explore. Oh, I did have one other, and I think we have to jump to the next one. But so another thing that you can do with it, which I just discovered, is that you can have it do things. So I think Heather has a Zap that she teaches about how to collect a W-9 when a new vendor is added. So you can have it set up in your client's QuickBooks files, so that when they add a vendor, it generates an email to them saying, hey, fill out this W-9. And so you're not having to chase them at the end of the year.
So awesome.
Another one that you can do, and this I thought was pretty cool. As you add new customers to QuickBooks, so let's say it's your QuickBooks, I'm using, QuickBooks Online for Accountants. I can have it add them automatically to MailChimp. I was like, oh, okay. So, and MailChimp can be used for so many things, not just marketing. You can have it where, like, I'm going on vacation, as some people have heard earlier.
Update, I'll be
So
gone.
I can say, hey, clients, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be out at the office for the next week. If there's an emergency, please call 911.
Right.
And so they're aware that I'm not going to be around. They get that email. I can see who opened it. So MailChimp is also a really great tool. But there are so many ways.
I've never thought of using them for stuff other than marketing. I remember what I wanted to say. In Zapier, you're not starting from scratch. You can certainly build sort of little zaps from scratch. But basically, every app they actually list the functionalities that can be connected. So it's literally no code. In addition, they also list, if you look up an app, they list popular zaps for that app. So it may be that the one you're looking for, someone has already figured out, and you can just be like, yes, please sign me up. And just have it be off and running before you can even blink. So if you haven't tried it, if you've been intimidated to try it, but you've heard of it and like thought, give it a go.
I think also some of it is just explore. If you're already using an app and you're having trouble, if you just go to Zapier and they have 2 boxes. What app are you looking for? What app do you want to connect to? But once you put in what app you're using, it'll tell you what the options are for what it can do. So like for Veeam, there's 2 options: when you send a payment or when the payment, I think, is deposited, something along those lines, right? So it's easy to say, okay, just send me a Slack message and kind of be done with it. But there were other options. I could have sent myself an email. I could have created a new client. There were a bunch of ways to do it. So just explore. It's also inexpensive. I will say that.
That's why it's great. And Kimberly asked, do we have to pay per transaction? Yes, you do, but only over 100 tasks a month. So it's great to go on there and just explore and find out. Also, if you think about it, it's like $20 for 750 tasks a month. Yes, that's
so I haven't paid for Zapier in a very long time.
Right. But also, even if you were using it for 750 or 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever, think about if you were actually doing a 2,000 tasks through Zapier, even if each of those tasks only took you 1 minute to do manually, you're saving more than $50 by not doing them yourself, by far and away. So just rather than thinking about it in terms of money, if you start with the sort of things that either take up a lot of your time, like junk time, like garbage time, or they take up a lot of your energy, like you're like, oh, I have to do that still, I'm so behind on this or that. Totally worth the price of admission to just figure out those 1 or 2 things. And it may even be capacity wise that it's free for you to do that. You just try it. Anyway, don't be intimidated.
Okay, so we do have to go to the next slide because we only have about 15 minutes left. Okay, so Rewind, as we mentioned earlier, is definitely a tool that we would have mentioned anyway. They've made some really big improvements and some really big changes to the product. And so we always try and bring you guys updates and any changes that may have happened to something you're already using or we were already using. But try and think of it, like I said earlier, in terms of, I feel like we've all done it, right? So I've connected an app or I've gone in and went in the wrong direction completely on something. And the client's like, oh no, that was this thing over here. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so now I have to go back in. I have to try and figure out what I did wrong. I have to delete out the transactions or change them or recategorize them. I have very much in the past wished that I had a point in time where I could say, oh, let's just undo all those things that I just did. Yes. And so that's what Rewind does for QuickBooks specifically. And I would say that's at least the first time that I came to know it was through QuickBooks, but they've also added some other integrations. So with QuickBooks, they don't just only do the backup, they also do copies of files. So you can create a copy of an entire file. I keep saying file because I guess desktop is where I started, but a QuickBooks company. Yeah. You can also back up and copy Shopify, BigCommerce for anyone that's using, anyone that has e-commerce clients. Trello, so all of your Trello boards that you've set up if you're using that for project management. And then they also offer an integration for Microsoft 365. So if you're using any of the apps where you might have to go back in time and see where you screwed up, or possibly where your client screwed up, or like I said, imported a bunch of data, Rewind is definitely the product for that.
I love that you can copy too and make a template out of some of these platforms. So you could make a QBO copy to then use. And also you're allowed to copy with Shopify and BigCommerce as well. So that certainly saves a lot of time in terms of setups.
Yeah, I think it also gives clients peace of mind. They set up a shop, they want to make sure that, and they can also copy a shop. So let's say they're going to create a second location, or second store, I should say, a digital location. You can copy things over and then just change out maybe some of the products or some of the branding, or maybe you want to change out a whole bunch of stuff, but you want to keep the products. Whatever the case is, you can use it to create a copy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Such a great tool to have when you're trying out new apps, especially.
Yeah. And that's why Murph said you can go back if you make a mistake.
He actually mentions them in that.
Yeah.
We are ready for another poll question. What is your favorite app in your stack? I love my GL, too many to list. I'm in transition. That's my secret sauce. I'm keeping it to myself. Or, you know, whatever.
So,
Kelly,
what's your
what
favorite
about
app?
you?
It's like, what's
Not
your
even
favorite
say it.
app?
Yeah, if you have one that Kelly or Kristen haven't talked about and you want to throw it in the chat, please feel free.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, by all means. Kelly, what's the one that you're really loving right now?
Okay, so I have to say, I'm a big fan of Liscio. I started using it last year, and at first I was like, oh, I don't know. I freaking love it. I've eliminated so many emails from my clients. I mean, everyone that's probably ever heard me talk, I talk about Veeam all the time because their customer service and their integration is so seamless that it's easy peasy for me. I'm trying to think, Uncat, I mean, I just started using that last year also, but really big fan. What about you?
Well, being with restaurants, I cannot say enough about Shogo.
You do mention that often.
It takes all the dailies out of POS systems of all stripes and puts them into QuickBooks and alerts you when something isn't coded right. So you can go in and do it. Daily entries are a huge part of doing good reporting, but they are also a huge part of what makes restaurants take so long. So it's really awesome. Also, I'm really deep into Notion right now, so I don't know.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So for the poll, 14% love my GL, too many to list, 29% in transition. Half of you guys.
That's awesome.
Are in transition. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. And secret sauce, 8%. I don't blame you. No shame. All right. Well, we're going to talk really quick about both Kelly and I were in San Francisco. I saw the trolley. The trolley is actually in San Diego, which is where we were. And we were there for a conference, and we came across a new app on the block that was doing something really cool that we wanted to make sure we told everyone about. It's been around for a minute, but in the last 3 months, they've added some functionality that to me is like, why didn't anyone think of that before? Broken bank fees are very sad. And they are continuing to just be more and more prevalent. And the lovely people at File have decided, oh, maybe when it comes to merchant transactions, maybe we don't have to go through the bank or the credit card itself. Maybe we can go straight to Visa and get the info and not worry about broken fees because we're working straight with Visa. How like genius is that? So that's what they're doing.
Yes.
It's amazing. They're about to add MasterCard, and I think he said
September, I think, for Amex.
I forget, said that Amex is coming in a few months.
Yeah.
I just think this is genius.
Yeah, I have to say, like, going to conferences, I'm always excited when I get to see something new or something different. This was pretty cool. And I think it was like minutes to sign up, right? So you're just putting in the account number, and then it's automatically pulling in those transactions. But you're able to, as soon as the card is swiped, you or your client in this case will get a text. You can take a picture of that receipt and attach it to that transaction. Super simple. Really easy to use. It's, we're all about like meeting the clients where they are. It's on their phone. It's tied to their account. Super, super easy to use.
So smart.
It's getting you the information you need. It's keeping your client on track. I mean,
especially for those credit cards. I mean, obviously, if you're using it with a bank debit card, obviously things can happen in the bank that don't happen on the debit card. And, this is like kind of built on top of an expense reimbursement and tracking. But they can also it can alert you if stuff isn't applied to a certain budget, a certain project. It's really robust. And I wouldn't be surprised at all with the way they're doing the feeds if they don't expand even further in the future. So I don't know. I just thought wow, if I had a lot of need for expense reporting, I would definitely be all over that.
Yeah,
for sure.
So we have about 10 minutes left. Filehq.com. And I'm going to put a link in the chat. To answer Alicia's question, it does integrate with QuickBooks. So everyone can go
and just so you guys know, we will be posting a link to a show notes page where all of these different things, because it goes really fast, all of these different things will be available, all the ones we use, recommend, all those kinds of things. So just for those that are asking about stuff in the chat, we'll try and answer, but also hang tight because we'll have a place to go for all that. We have to hurry because these apps are so great. Okay, we're going to talk about my problem. We have usually a chat with someone who's really killing it. Last time we talked with Allison Ball, who's obviously amazing, and that was lovely. This time, because it's a webinar for Future Forward, Kelly has been on me to solve my email problem. And yes, email doesn't technically integrate with QuickBooks Online, but I promise this will make sense. So first things first, if you're thinking about changing things in your app stack, the first step is to identify the key players. That for me, I mean, for all of us, pretty much it usually means a general ledger. I don't think anyone's trying to switch general ledgers midstream on a client. Beyond that, for me, it's the POS system my clients use because I have no ability to control that for them. And short of just, refusing to help people who have certain systems, which I do with some systems. But beyond that, POS is a huge expense. And so usually it's not really kosher to ask people to change. And I know for you, Kelly, e-commerce platforms is something that's kind of on your clients' list that you can't really control.
Right. Absolutely. So sometimes it's just learning to work with them or getting apps that make those things easier. But let's not stray from your issue.
Okay, but first let's do a poll question.
Yes. We want to make sure you guys get your CP. And we have about 8 minutes. And so I'm having a little panic attack, but I want to make sure that everyone has the CP they need. Would you like to hear from Rewind after we've just told you how amazing it is?
I feel like not at this time. I already use them. Is the legit answer? If you already use them.
I'm already.
Why wouldn't you want to hear from Rewind? And we'll just leave that up and continue. That poll question can just stay there. So basically, beyond that, the second part of what you need to do if you're doing app stack stuff, like trying to integrate something, is identify your key features. What I mean by this is there might be key positions in your stack where oh, I really need time tracking, or I really need document storage, or I really need a bill pay or expense reimbursement sort of situation. But the most important thing might also be something that you need in terms of functionality. Like I know for me, I am ever on the search for a reporting app that handles 13 period reporting beautifully. I am still searching, but that is something that a reporting app's ability to deal with classes, which is how I get around that 13 period thing, that is a game changer for me. So it's one of the first questions I ask when I'm looking at an app. Hey, do you import classes? How do you deal with classes? Or do you? Can I sort by classes? Can I filter by classes? Kelly, do you have some things on your functionality list that are like, yes, please?
So I always say when I'm choosing any app that QuickBooks is my central. And so it needs to somehow bring all the things in for me, being QuickBooks in the middle.
Yeah.
I do not enjoy doing extra work or going to find things elsewhere and having to manually do anything really if I can avoid it. And so anytime that I choose an app, my number one, and I totally respect, somebody put in the chat, they said, does it integrate with QuickBooks?
Yeah.
Good question, because I wouldn't go near it if it didn't.
First question.
So for me, that's probably the most important. And then after that, it just depends. So it depends on what kind of client it is. You know, if it's e-commerce, what platforms do they integrate with? Are they bringing in sales receipts? Are they doing journal entries? Can I use classes, locations, etc.? Are you going to create the accounts for me in the chart of accounts? Are you going to make me do it myself? Is it going to make sense when you do it, etc.? So like there's a couple things that I look for. And most of it is so that I'm keeping all of that extra garbage, so to speak, out of my QuickBooks file.
Yes.
Because I don't want the extra bloat in there.
Speaking of garbage, the third thing you do is actually the thing that I failed to do when plugging holes in my email system. I just kept on plugging holes and doing little zaps and all the things so that it would continue to automatically work the way I needed it to. And now I never stepped back and said, hey, what exactly am I building here? What is the big picture of this, rather than just the smoothness from point A to point B? What is the smoothness from point A to point Z? Like, is it a holistic system that other people with brains can use? In my case, which is why Kelly is on my butt,
I'm cringing.
The answer is no. It is not usable by any other human being and is becoming rapidly not usable by myself. Here's the point. The point is, no one sets out to make a Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
But it is really easy if you're adding new apps and plugging automating little tiny bridges, which is, you know, apps like Zapier are great for that. But there's also the time, like the energy and time and stress of keeping the whole ecosystem running. And so the more connections you have and the more little automations you have, the more that has to work for a thing to happen.
Think
the
of
more
it
that has to go right.
So to be fair, her email system to me is like bubble gum and zip ties. Maybe there was some Velcro in there. And then eventually maybe the email comes through. So like it started here, it pinged off of all the things, and then hopefully it made it to her inbox. And so the point is you can overdo it, right? So you might have put this in to make your calendar matched and make things more simple, but then you tied it to the wrong email address. So you had to reconnect it or redirect it. And now you're using a Gmail as an alias for your actual email. Yes. So that when someone books an appointment, it pushes back out to all the things, right? So you can do that in your process. And so her email is absolutely a Frankenstein, but you can also make the same mistake with your accounting apps. And so that was a simple way of saying she has it all tied together. But if one thing breaks,
none of those steps didn't make sense looked at in a vacuum. And that's the reason why it's so easy to get to that place, right? Because all of those single steps were the next right thing to do to solve that little tiny like tunnel vision problem.
Absolutely. The other thing with that is if you put a bunch of things in place, sometimes when one thing breaks, you don't know which thing broke. And so you're having to kind of work backwards to make sure. So sometimes people use different apps for the same thing. And so you wind up doubling up on, let's say, an import, or you have a duplication somewhere, but you're not really sure which one
Crazy.
pushed it through. Make sure that you're not using apps to make your process more complicated. The idea is that it's going to automate some things for you. It's going to take some stress away from you. It's going to make your process easier. And so if you're finding that it's really painful or an uphill battle, it's possible that you're just overthinking it, or that you've put too much in place. And so now it's all dependent on one another and it doesn't really actually work very well.
I think that's it. So as
take
we're
a step
thinking
back.
about integration acceleration, as much as we accelerate, you do still want to pump the brakes every time, take a step back and say, okay, is this whole system working in general for us to make things simpler, more straightforward? Yes.
Absolutely. And I will say, thankfully, because I think Gary is going to freak out in just a sec, we are at our last slide.
Yes. We
did the polling question, and that was the plug for our Etsy shop, which I will post in the chat again.
Yes, we will post this. It will also be on the show notes. And we look forward to seeing you in quarter 3, back at our regularly scheduled.
Oh, and I will be at Scaling New Heights, where I will
yes,
hopefully
Kelly will
see
be
some
there.
of you. If you are there, please introduce yourself. I would love to meet you in person.
All right. Well, Kelly and Kristen, I was going to come in and say, well, I am the monster here having to close this down. But no, we certainly appreciate your knowledge. I mean, Zapier clearly is something that
Game changer.
yeah, it's a game changer. If you're not using it, you should be. We use it a little bit. Nayo on our previous session said that she actually was able to put off hiring a person for a year by leveraging Zapier. Clearly, tons of tools out there to use. We'll keep covering them
And
here
it
on.
makes you think about your process. It makes you have to actually map it out.
Yep, takes time on the front end, but it saves days and weeks and years on the back end, right? So Kelly and Kristen, thank you both. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your knowledge. I've got to bounce to another session here.
Yes.
So we will call it an end here, and the CPE certificate, 2 to 3 days, you'll get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, thanks everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.